Hey everybody, I'm Brian from BrianKeaneFitness.com, qualified personal trainer and sports nutritionist. Here are my favorite recovery methods for GAA players. When it comes to recovery, 80% of that is going to come down to your nutrition and your sleep. A nutritional plan with good complex carbohydrates, healthy fats, complete protein sources, lots of fruit and vegetables. Mixed in with high quality sleep is a recipe for high levels of recovery for a GAA player. With that being said, there are a few other things that you can do that could potentially speed up your recovery between games or between sessions. And here are my favorites. Number 1, foam rolling correctly. Now, foam rolling is a little bit of a catch-22 when it comes to the research and when it comes to people. A lot of the research will suggest that it works tremendously well to support you between sessions, but doesn't actually help over the long term. But what I'd say here is what you do consistently over time is going to yield a lot of progress and results and dividends for you as a GAA player. And if you can improve your recovery between sessions, you're going to perform better. So I'm a fan, but only when it's done correctly. When you foam roll correctly, you're doing a form of myofascial release. The analogy I use for myofascial release is if you picture muscle tightness like a ball in a fist, if you apply pressure on top of it, it releases some of that pressure in the muscle and can make you feel a little bit looser, but only when you do it correctly. So how do you foam roll correctly? It depends on the body part that you're focusing on, but the process is pretty much the same regardless. You find your spot that needs to be released, and then you apply pressure on top of it until it releases. So for example, if you're trying to roll out your IT band or your quad, you go on your roller, whatever roller that is, whether it's a traditional roller, a rumble roller, or a vibrating roller, you find your sore spot, and then you start to go up and down very slightly until that point starts to release. And you'll feel it, because it'll go from very sore and very tight to feeling a little bit looser. And then once that spot releases, you move down slightly, and you do it on the next tightest spot. And you rinse and repeat that until you've done the muscle group that was extremely tight to begin with. And if you're still unsure on this, you can ask any physio or any health practitioner who specializes in sports recovery, and they'll show you how to do this correctly. Number 2, trigger point release. Trigger point release and foam rolling are kind of two sides of the same coin because they follow very similar protocols for how to adopt them into a recovery plan. The major difference being that you're going to apply it on different body parts based on what your higher priority is. I'm a big fan of foam rolling when it comes to things like quads and glutes, lats. But I prefer something like trigger point tension when it comes to hamstrings or traps. And trigger point tension follows a very similar process to foam rolling. The only difference is the shape of what you're using. Again, different experts will have different methods that they like to use. Some like to use a hard ball, like a sliotar or a baseball. Others will use a trigger point ball, which is very similar, just a hard ball with a bit more give. And others will like to use something softer like a tennis ball. But what you do and how you use it is the same. For example, let's say you're doing your hamstrings and you've got really, really tight hamstrings and you want to loosen them up a little bit. My personal preference for this is to sit on a hard chair, something like a wooden chair, put your foot at a 90-degree angle, and then put your trigger point ball or your sliotar or your tennis ball underneath your hamstrings and find that tight spot. When you find that spot, apply the pressure downwards or just push down very slightly on it. And after 20, 30, 40 seconds, it'll start to release, very similar to the myofascial release and the foam rolling I mentioned earlier. And once it releases, you move down a millimeter or two to the next tightest spot and you rinse and repeat that until you've loosened up your hamstrings. And if we're using the research as the guide, both of these methods are very effective in between sessions. They may not be the best protocol over the long term, but if you find that you're sore and tight in between sessions, they can be really, really good at improving recovery between those sessions. So incorporate them into your plan as often as needed. Some do a little bit every day, some do a very focused session per week, and everything in between. Number 3, massage guns and vibration therapy. Both of these methods I'm a big fan of. Massage guns in particular have really taken the GAA world by storm in the last few months, and for good reason. They're very effective tools. Now, which brand you use is largely personal preference. They're all more or less the same. But how you use it with your recovery, again, depends on your starting point and what areas you want to focus on. Personally, my massage gun is something that I use between all of my running sessions, particularly on my calves. They get so tight. And there's a lot of GAA players out there who are similar. Your calves get tight between games for whatever reason. The biomechanics of your run, your footwear choice, there's a whole host of reasons why your calves can get tight. But using a massage gun on that particular body part can help loosen it up and improve the blood flow. Similar to the vibration on something like a foam roller or a vibrating foam roller. Again, they work in quite similar ways. They're trying to improve blood flow so it enhances recovery. And the theory being that if you improve the blood flow to the particular area, you're going to enhance your recovery. Sports massage and deep tissue work in a very similar way, albeit a lot more extreme, which brings me on to my next point. Number 4, sports massage and deep tissue. I could not be a bigger believer in sports massage with a good sports masseuse or physiotherapist regularly to enhance your recovery between sessions as a GAA player. Now there's a pro and a con to sports massage. The pro being It's very similar to the myofascial release or the trigger point tension or even the massage gun and vibrating therapy. You're going to have a sports masseuse who can go very deep on your tight muscle groups and help improve your performance by improving that blood flow within the muscle groups and just making you feel a lot looser and less restrictive so that your performance improves over time. Downside is that it costs quite a lot. So my advice is, based on your current financial standpoint, experiment with how much sports massage you could potentially do. I, for example, generally get it 3 or 4 times a month, and it massively improves my recovery between sessions, albeit endurance events that I do. But you might find that once every 4 weeks or once every 6 weeks works really well for you financially and time-wise. But a good sports therapist is incredible, and I'll tag a couple of my favorites below, and feel free to tag yours as well. These are all ones that I've used personally and I highly recommend. And I have no affiliates with any of them. They're just people that I use that I think are brilliant at what they do. Number 5. Heat exposure. Personally, I'm a big fan of heat exposure for a whole host of reasons. I like the cognitive enhancement element, the increase in BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which can help you concentrate and retain more information over time. But when it comes to recovery for GAA players, you're going to find the increase in heat helps if you're feeling exceptionally tight. If you're feeling tight after a game or after a hard session, going into a jacuzzi, going into a sauna, or going into a steam room that's hot can help get everything loose. Athletes have been doing this for years, and now the science is starting to catch up with it. So if you're sore in between sessions or feeling extra stiff, get yourself exposed to some heat. Or even better, if you're at home, take a hot bath after games or after hard sessions. Maybe add in some Epsom salts in there as well to increase your magnesium levels, which will further enhance recovery. And if you're doing it at night time, will probably support enhanced quality of sleep, which, as we go back to the start of the video, is 80% alongside your nutrition of overall recovery. So all of these things add up. And then finally, point number 6, the most scientifically backed and researched, cold exposure, i.e. cryotherapy or ice baths. Again, this is something athletes have been doing for years. Having ice baths post-workout, jumping into the sea, or having a cryotherapy unit that they can jump into. They all work in very similar ways. They reduce the amount of inflammation in your body between sessions. So for example, if you've had an exceptionally hard pitch session or a game where your legs are feeling heavy or you're feeling tired, jumping into an ice bath post-workout or post-game is going to reduce that inflammation and can speed up your recovery between sessions. Now again, how you use it is down to you. If you're coming into an off season or you're injured and taking a break for the time being and your goal is hypertrophy and putting on size, you don't want to jump into an ice bath and reduce that inflammation post-workout because it'll blunt some of that hypertrophy or some of those signaling pathways that you need in order to build muscle. But if you're talking purely performance and recovering between games and sessions, then jumping into an ice bath, cold sea or cryotherapy bath or unit directly after training will enhance recovery between sessions. There are thousands of articles on PubMed on this particular topic, and more so than everything else I've talked about in this video, a lot of robust studies that prove it. So if you only take one takeaway from this video and you want to improve your recovery more than anything else, expose yourself to cold. Ice baths, cold sea, cryotherapy baths or units. So there you have it. They're some of my favorite recovery methods for GAA players to improve their performance between games or between sessions. And a disclaimer at the end of the video, if you have any pre-existing injuries, go to a physiotherapist or a professional healthcare practitioner to look after it. These are tips and tricks that can potentially support you with your recovery between sessions, but they're not to come at the expense of a proper rehabilitation program if you're injured. If you enjoyed this video and you're a GAA player and want to learn more about recovery, go check out episode 45 of the Lean Body podcast for GAA players, where I break down all the popular recovery methods from supplements and compression gear to some of the things I've talked about in today's video. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like and subscribe for videos coming each and every week.